Welcome to the WoW podcast, where we bring you inspiring stories and insights from our university community. Tune in for conversations about growth, success, and the power of communication in the academic world. So get ready to soar with us on the wings of wisdom.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of season 3 of the WoW podcast. My name is David Carl, and joining me today is the Associate Director of the Writing and Communication Center, Dr. Andrew Roble, and Zach Harrison, who is a junior and a coach here in the Writing and Communication Center, and he is also on the soccer team and a business major. So thank you for everyone for helping to host this. Today, we're honored to welcome Dr. Kirsty Jones. She's an esteemed professor in the religion department. Dr. Jones joined Ashland University in 2023, and she's brought a wealth of experience from her studies at several prestigious universities, including Cambridge and Georgetown. Her journey in academia is marked by a constant innovation in teaching, and it's been informed by her extensive experience working with students with special needs in her lifelong passion for animals as well. She is also known for her vibrant and enthusiastic teaching style, which draws on her research on the Bible, particularly in relation to references of disability. These experiences have undoubtedly helped her to create and sustain an enjoyable and welcoming learning environment for all of her students. So please join us as we delve into her insights on contributing to student success and her journey in shaping the academic landscape here at Ashland University. So our student Zach is going to start off with several questions for Dr. Jones. Zach?
Hey, Dr. Jones, good to see you again. My first question would be, what can you tell us about your experience as an undergrad student?
Nice to see you again, Zach, also. I really did not enjoy my undergrad. And I frequently tell my students, especially my freshmen, that if they're not having the time of their lives, that's okay, and that they don't have to pressure themselves to make this the best time of their lives. Of course, I had amazing opportunities, they have amazing opportunities, but I also felt so much pressure that I should be having this amazing, wonderful time, whereas in reality, I just really missed my parents and I had this terrible imposter syndrome. So I was at Cambridge University. It was a really big deal that I got in. It was a really big deal to my family. I'm a first generation student. My parents, who are my best supporters and my best friends, didn't do post 16 education. And whilst I never felt pressure from them, I definitely felt pressure from just being at Cambridge. I had to work so incredibly hard all the time to stay on top of my work. And yeah, I just really struggled. It wasn't until I got to my last year of undergrad when I focused on subjects that I was really passionate about. And I think had just developed some confidence in my own abilities that I started enjoying my time there. And then I did this kind of unconventional in America, but fairly conventional in the UK, 9-month master's program, which is the most intense thing ever, to do a master's degree in 9 months. And I loved it. It was such hard work, but I really, really loved it. It was where I found my voice in writing. It was where I found my voice in communicating my ideas. And yeah, it was where I began to have confidence that actually this was what I wanted to do.
Awesome. And how have some of those childhood experiences influenced some of the choices you've made and kind of your perspective?
So I think other than the mental health piece, reminding students that they don't have to be okay, that it's really important and a really good thing to ask for help. I think that one thing that really struck me or really stuck with me throughout my childhood experiences, as you mentioned, and also into my undergraduate degree, is the value of someone believing in you and someone telling you that you have a good idea. I really distinctly remember my year 5, so like grade 5 teacher. I was 9. She was a really cool teacher, and she told me that I was clever. And I believed her, and I had confidence that I could do things. And then when I was in, I'll just use age because I think it translates better. I was 15, 16, had a really amazing religious studies teacher at secondary school or high school. And again, she believed in me. She was interested in my ideas. She would talk to me about the things I believed in and the things that I was interested in. And then again, when I got to undergrad, I was really struggling, and I had an amazing supervisor, Dr. Gray. And again, she was interested in me as well as my ideas. She cared about my well-being as well as the things I was working on. And once I got to grad school, my PhD advisor, Dr. Belser, who is one of the most wonderful people in the world, believed in me and, more importantly, cared about me. So that's what I try and bring into the classroom. Like, regardless of whether the student is a religion major or someone who really doesn't want to be in exploring the Bible but has to be in it anyway because it's a required course, I try and remind them frequently, like as often as possible, that they matter, that I care about their well-being, not only what their grades are. And I also remind them that they have really good ideas. Because a lot of the time, the students who maybe don't really want to be there anyway are still the ones who have really good ideas. Like, their background knowledge about the Bible, their background interest in the Bible is not a barrier for them having good ideas and exciting ideas. And the fact that people believed in me and encouraged me is probably what informs my teaching the most, because I want my students to know that I care about them. I want my students to know that their ideas are important and that their ideas matter and that people are interested in their ideas. And that also like informs how I write assignments and how I teach classes. So I try and recognize that not all people in my class are there because they are really, really excited about the subject. Fortunately, many of them are, but lots of them aren't. You know this, Zach, you're in one of my intro classes. There are many people who are good students, but who aren't interested in religion. But I try and make things interesting and useful for students who maybe didn't think that the course would be interesting and useful. So like an example of that, I asked my world religions class to do presentations on different world religions. I had 2 students who couldn't choose their world religion. And I knew that they were both really into video games. So I asked them if instead of doing a presentation on a religion, whether they would want to do a presentation on how religious themes influenced the formation of video games. And they ran with it. And it was amazing. It was a really wonderful presentation. And it was something that they were interested in. So they were able to integrate what they were interested in with the course, and also communicate to their peers something that they were interested in. And students might not feel like they contribute much to the classroom, but in that moment, they were the experts. They knew more than I did about video games and religion, and they owned the classroom. They were the ones who, yeah, they were the experts.
Awesome. And as a former student in exploring world religions, I can definitely vouch for that. You could definitely tell there were some people that just were really just there for the credit, weren't really interested. But when we were doing those presentations, like you could tell they were fully engaged and doing what they wanted to do. Another question I had was about kind of your journey. So you've pursued a lot of professional aspirations. And then what kind of led you to ultimately choosing your current path that you're on?
This is a really good question. So when I was like 13, we have to do work experience in the UK. So we have to go and do a job for a week that we might want to do when we grow up. Didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a vet, but I knew I wasn't going to be a vet. Or like a professional ballet dancer. I couldn't really dance. I don't know why I wanted to be a ballet dancer. And my mom said, why don't you go to the local special needs school? Don't love the term special needs, but that's what the schools are called. So I went to the local special needs school, and half an hour in, I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I feel comfortable. I feel excited about this. So I left that week as a 13-year-old wanting to be a special needs teacher. My careers advisors at school suggested that I did a subject at university and then got my teacher's license. And I started doing religious studies, and I also started doing like disability ministry in my spare time. So disability ministry is basically working with and in faith communities to I don't know, like recognize that there are disabled people who go to church or to synagogue, although I was working in a Christian context. So I kind of half pivoted and was like, okay, I want to go into disability ministry. And throughout all of this, I was working with people with disabilities. I worked with two young people in particular. They're about the same age as me. And so as I was learning all of this stuff at university, I was also working with them. And yeah, I feel like I'm going slightly off track. But throughout all of this, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something with disability and religion. And as I was doing my undergrad and then especially my master's, I realized that the problem in many churches wasn't that people like didn't care about people with disabilities. It was that biblical texts were being employed in a way that was really harming people with disabilities. An example that I will always remember is I went to this huge Christian conference in the UK, and the kids ministry. So there were like 800 kids in age venues that were like 10 and 11, 12 and 13. So there were many, many children. The children were told about Jesus healing people with disabilities and then told to go out and pray for disabled people. So they were coming up to all of the kids that I was working with and praying that they would be healed. So, we'd be walking around the huge campsite. It was inevitably raining. And like hordes of children would come up to my one young person who was using a wheelchair and lay hands on them without asking the child and pray that they would be healed and that Jesus would forgive them for their sins. And it was, to this day, like, it is profoundly troubling. And I realized that this wasn't the best use of the Bible and that this was really, really harming the kids I was working with and their families. I was in church settings where like parents were told that their child's disability was just a really clear manifestation of the sin of the world. And it was really icky and really horrible. So I decided that I was going to use the privilege that I had of studying the Bible at Cambridge to try and change that. So I've gone into academic biblical studies and have published and continue writing on disability in the Bible with an eye to helping religious communities understand these texts, understand the ways that preaching about them can be really harmful, and talk to them about, yes, this is in the Bible. Yes, it's important to remember that for you, the Bible is the word of God, but yes, you could really harm someone by doing that. So let's think through how we can use a biblical text to uphold someone's dignity, as well as like staying true to your religious traditions.
That's great. I think that's definitely a part of the Bible and just religion as a whole that people don't really seem to connect with or really even notice. So I think it's important to recognize that. Well, my last question was, if you stuck with your first career choice as a child, what would your current profession be? I know you already mentioned wanting to be in the ballet, but did you have any other aspirations when you were younger?
Yeah, I really wanted to be a vet. That was kind of when I grew up, I want to be a vet. If I had stuck with that now, I probably would have fewer vet bills than I do. I don't think that my mental health would have handled it. I don't think I could have dealt with that, and I am very glad that I teach instead. But yeah, I think that the answer to that would be, yeah, fewer vet bills and maybe more animals because of fewer vet bills.
Great. Thank you, Zach. Zach will
Thank
ask a
you.
couple more questions at the end, but wonderful answers. So what do you enjoy most about being faculty here at AU, and what do you think is the most challenging aspect of that?
The best parts of it are being able to connect with students. I genuinely look forward to coming to work every day. Like, I look forward to seeing my students. I look forward to the conversations that I have with them. I look forward to the laughs that we have in class. My classes are really loud, and there is a lot of laughter, which I think is great. I think it is such a huge privilege to be able to have fun in your work. At the same time as being able to teach. Like, we don't just laugh, we learn stuff as well. So being able to have that relationship with students. I have adjuncted at other universities, and I am so grateful for the experiences that I've had there. I have never worked with students like AU students. I've never worked with students who are as keen to get involved with like all areas of the classroom. So a really lovely example of that is that I have an embedded coach in my Bible class. Shout out to Josh, who is a wonderful help. And then I have another religion major student who wants to teach when he grows up, and he just asked if he can also come and help in class. And I was like, well, you're not going to be able to get paid through the WCC, but sure. So now my Bible classes, I have 2 students of mine who show up and enthusiastically help with my intro to Bible students. It's wonderful. And being able to like see that development in the students. I had Josh in Josh was the first student I ever spoke to at AU because we both turned up early for my first class along with one of his friends. So being able to see that and have that working relationship with students is really cool. I guess the one disadvantage, and it's not even AU specific, it's my life choices specific, is that I live 90 minutes from work. And so that's hard because I would really like to be able to watch more of my students like football games and sports games, and I'd like to be able to be a bit more involved in the town community, which I just can't at the moment. But like, that's not really an AU specific thing. I don't think I can think of anything AU specific.
Right. You kind of broke up there a little bit, but it's fine. Yeah, but it's just the biggest thing is just the distance right now that you are from campus. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a choice that I made. So it's it's not really an AU specific thing, and I work around it. So
right. That's great. So, obviously what goes on in the classroom sounds like it's really working. Lots of collaboration between you and your students, and to create a really valuable environment there. But as far as collaboration with faculty members, how do you do that in order to achieve the collective goal of student success? Can you talk about collaboration with your colleagues a little bit?
yeah, so I'm really lucky that in the religion department, we all get on really well as colleagues and as people. So there is a lot of support for one another. And that's been really beneficial as a new faculty member to like have people who support me and who like would notice if I feel tired or if I'm having a bad day at work. That kind of motivates collaboration. I feel like the working relationship with our colleagues is something that really motivates you to want to collaborate with people. This semester, I have tried to be more intentional with collaborating with people in other departments, and something I'm really excited about that we have done part of what we're doing, and then we have a bit coming up, is working with the dietetics department. So I've been working with Professor Reed in dietetics and my Islam class. And it might be like, why are dietetics and Islam important? Well, it's also interesting to note that I have a ton of football players in that class and a ton of student athletes um, from other sports disciplines. So working with dietetics has helped us to talk about like the social and physical implications of fasting within Islam and dietary requirements. So this has again enabled students to talk about what they're interested in and apply what we're working on to like their own lives and something that they might be able to use in the future. Loads of the students are in sports management. They will be working with other athletes in developing like nutrition plans and things. And this collaboration has just been a really fun, nice, and also really easy way to do this. We had a class where Professor Reed and I brought her dietetics majors and my Islam class together. We just had a class conversation for an hour. We'd planned other activities to do, but the students had such good questions and were so engaged and were talking like across classes that we did not use those other exercises. And then we're going to be building on that with a collaboration in the dietetics lab where we're going to continue talking about fasting in Islam and the physiological effects of that. And then we're going to do some cooking and some baking. And we're going to bake some of the traditional Eid desserts together.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Roble here. He's got several questions for you.
Always nice to see you, Dr. Jones, and thank you so much for your brilliant answers so far. I really love your insights on working with students and also your colleagues. Continuing on these previous questions, are there any new initiatives or programs that your department in particular has introduced over the past couple of years or is planning to introduce in the upcoming years?
So towards the end of last year, we relaunched the Religion Honors Society, which is Theta Alpha Kappa, and we have some really, really keen religion majors. And so one of the things that we did was to present at the Society for Biblical Literature Global Virtual Meeting, which is an online meeting. I had one student give an individual presentation, and then I had either three, I think there were three of them, give a group presentation on an activity that we'd worked on in class. And then coming up in November, I'm going with 5 of them to the annual meeting, which is like, I think it's between 7,000 and 10,000 biblical scholars and religious studies scholars descending on a large conference center in the United States. This year, we're going to Boston. And the students were so enthusiastic. I was told as an undergrad, like, you probably shouldn't go. You're going to be really overwhelmed. I'm not worried about that with these students. And we are so excited as a department to see that our students from small Ashland, I mean, we all know that we are not an internationally known school. Like if I say to people at home I teach in Ashland, they have no idea. It's not like I'm saying to them I teach at Harvard. But these students can hold their own. These students hold their own not only amongst students from the big Ivy League schools, but amongst professors from the Ivy League schools. Their presentations at the global conference last year were some of the best that other colleagues from other institutions had heard. Like people said to me, your student's an undergrad? Like they're not a PhD student. So I'm really excited at this initiative and also super grateful at the universities to supporting them. We're getting some support from the College of Arts and Sciences and through some Early Promise Awards and research presentation grants. So yeah, I guess that's the initiative that I am thinking about the most at the moment and I'm the most excited about.
And that's great too. That also kind of feeds into part of my next question. That's obviously a wonderful benefit of technology. Can you comment further on how you see technology affecting the future of both our faculty and our student body. Maybe some great aspects of it that's really making things more helpful, such as that virtual conference, and then things that we kind of have to be on the lookout for, any issues that we could anticipate and head off at the pass, perhaps.
Yeah, as you mentioned, like the ability to connect with scholars from across the world is a really helpful aspect of technology. I've also been able to like Zoom in or Teams in some colleagues from other disciplines to just talk for like half an hour to my classes, which has been wonderful because realistically they're not going to be able to come to Ohio to talk to a class for half an hour. I think the thing that most people are thinking about at the moment is AI. One thing that I'm really excited about with AI is how it can make learning more accessible and inclusive to people with disabilities. There are some really amazing ways that AI could be can and are being utilized to support learners with disabilities, especially well, something that I have discovered recently is like the use of sorry, I'm kind of blanking and stalling a little bit here. The use of like the optics and AI with iPhones to help people who are visually impaired in social situations. So being able to hold your phone over a menu at a restaurant and have it spoken to you, what's on the menu. So that's super exciting, but not in the realm of like education. But yes, the negative side of things is having people using AI to write their papers. It's something that I not only hear people talking about on campus, but that I talk to my colleagues at other institutions about. And other than like the traditional ways of let's go back to paper and pen in class written assignments, I think one thing that this really, really reminds us that we have to do is personalizing learning. So going right back to like one of the first questions you asked me about, the majority of students or a sizable amount of students use AI to write essays because they believe they're not capable of doing it themselves. They believe that their professor doesn't really, well, they believe that their professor doesn't know them well enough to detect whether or not they've used AI or not. And they believe that they, like I said, that they're not capable of doing it themselves. I hope, and maybe this is just me being super idealistic and living in a dreamland, I have this hope that if I remind my students that I don't care about their grammar and spelling, but just really want to hear their idea about the Bible, that maybe they won't use it as much. Like I said, maybe this is idealistic, and I obviously use other things to try and mitigate use of AI or prevent the use of AI or like stop it affecting my students' like production in class. But I also hope that like by reminding the students of their abilities that maybe they'll use it less. Yeah. It's a really horrible conversation.
Yeah, and it's been ongoing and it definitely will continue. Um, have you explored AI personally by yourself just to get an idea of what the students are exposed to, or to see how perhaps you could use it in a responsible way in your classroom?
Yeah, I'm quite a big fan of using AI to help me teach. And one way that I really like using it is I will write like a quiz or an exam, and then I will feed it into ChatGPT and I'll ask GPT to make it more dyslexic friendly. So many of our students don't have diagnosed dyslexia, which is a difference in how people read letters. And ChatGPT will tell me what letters many people with dyslexia struggle with. So like combinations of letters, like a B and a D next to each other in a word is going to throw many people off. And ChatGPT will reword my quiz and my exam so that those letters don't come next to each other. And so that it is just easier to read. And I also So I really like that. I think I don't just use it for students with dyslexia. I'll pass my exam through it, and that's the exam that everyone will get. Another thing that I like and my students like me doing is I will feed in like the multiple choice questions for an exam. I will ask GPT to rewrite those questions in another way. So they have the essence of the questions, but not the exact same questions. And then it will even make a Kahoot spreadsheet. So it will turn the exam into alternative questions that I'm not asking on the exam, but which cover the same material. And then it will make it into a Kahoot for me, which saves an awful lot of time. And then with that awful amount of time, I can be working on other stuff for my students.
Very good too. And I think it's also very important to note when you're using AI, it's to enhance studies that you've already completed, to use knowledge you've already gained through your extensive studies and experience. And I think that's what we're trying to get through to our students is that AI is a good tool to use to explore and how that you may use your personal knowledge, but it's not just a place to go down to the well and try to pull up a whole bucket of information, much of which we often confirm is erroneous, right? So that responsible use is very important to everybody, and it's so amazing to see the ways that you're encouraging that responsible use in your program and particularly in your classroom. So we really do appreciate that. Um, one other question I have for you, and obviously this is something near and dear to our hearts. It would be obviously as an academic leader, how do you view the importance of promoting communication skills among your students?
I mean, it obviously is super important. And I've been trying to get them to communicate, like to work on their communication skills in different ways. I think I'll talk a bit about like spoken communication and a way that we've been doing that in class. Many of the students, I'm sure that Zach will be able to corroborate with me on this. Students don't like talking in class. Students do not like volunteering answers to questions. And if they do, I think we have all had or been in classes where there are like 2 or 3 people who really know the stuff and who've really done the reading and who have really excellent ideas. But there's 3 of them and there's 27 other students in the class. So something that I've been working on from like the first class in every single class of every single semester is getting the students to hear their own voices and to hear one another's voices. I start off the semester by doing it in a way that I think some students think is really silly. I will get them in the first class to share something about them that they don't think is true of anyone else in the class. So there's often a lot of laughing and then they have to listen to one another to make sure that the fact shared isn't something that is in common with them. It gets the students who are really passionate about something to have something easy to talk about. I also love it when I have students who are neurodiverse and who really like talking about their special interests, but don't like making social small talk. They can talk about their special interest and they are the expert for a moment. And they are the center of attention in a really nice way for a moment. The class gets very loud, which I love. And they communicate with each other in a really, really low stakes way that is hopefully fun and silly. I think giving the students chance to be silly and communicate through that is integral for them then giving then like having the confidence to communicate other things in class, because all of my students in my current classes, all of my students will talk in class. They might not like be super enthusiastic about it, but they will all share ideas and they will all share good ideas that they have thought through. I do not believe in cold calling students. Like even with that activity, I will email them beforehand and say, this is what we're doing. If you're not comfortable with it, like let me know in advance. I will discreetly not call on you. But this is what we're going to do. You can prepare it. You can prepare it. I think cold calling students is just horribly anxiety inducing. But I have lots of different ways that we do spoken communication. So one idea, I'm pretty sure that I got the idea from Dr. Grady in English, is to give everyone a coin, and everyone has to share something in class. And when they do so, they can give away their coin. It means that not one person can share everything and that everyone has to talk. They get very competitive about who gets rid of their coins first. Ashland students are really, really competitive, and they all talk. They've all had, this is what you're going to be talking about in class today, so you have something to share. And yeah, so they all communicate with some degree of confidence and some degree of, I have to do this. But because they've heard their voices and each other's voices throughout the semester, they seem more comfortable in doing so.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we'll give a little break from the technology portion and just kind of get back to the humanity and what brings us back to teaching and not even just teaching, but this idea that we could share our opinions, knowledge, values in the classroom, and how that's a space to foster our overall growth as both instructors, as academic leaders, and as lifelong learners, right? Um, you discussed the changing the way both religious leaders and lay people approach certain phenomena in the Bible, such as the representation of people with disabilities. Can you go into a little bit more about your personal experiences and how that helps you with this like ever evolving goal?
So just to clarify, the ever evolving goal, like within the classroom or just in wider society?
In both, whatever you feel comfortable
Okay.
with.
I think so. I'm gonna think about my experiences with my young people, Jonah and Chloe. So, Chloe is now 28 and Jonah is, I think, 32. Jonah is doesn't communicate with words. He is verbal, but he doesn't communicate with words. And they both have severe, we call them learning disabilities in the UK. You'd call them intellectual and developmental disabilities over here. And I grew up with them. So I learned to see the world through someone who dearly loves Jonah and Chloe. My first, my first like, oh, church needs to be a little bit different moment was when I was going to church and I realized that I couldn't take Jonah with me because people would not like that Jonah flaps and blows raspberries constantly when he's really, really happy. People were okay with Chloe shouting amen really enthusiastically. People were not okay with Jonah flapping and blowing raspberries when the leader was praying or something. So my experiences with them really transformed how I engage with the world. Like how people looked at me when I was with Jonah and Chloe. How people would like tell me that I was a saint for spending time with people who I loved and who I had an awful lot of fun with. Like that changed how I understood other people and changed how, this is going to come out really convoluted, changed how I understood how people understood Jonah and Chloe and people like Jonah and Chloe, which was really sobering, and really shifted my perspective from I'm really mad at these people and really angry at them for not making the world accessible to, oh, these people have never known the friendship of a Jonah and a Chloe. Like they have never known the sheer joy that comes when Chloe asks you what your favorite something is, because favorite is a really hard concept to learn. Like it, too much to go into, but when Chloe asked me my favorite color, I was the happiest person. People who looked at me and Jonah when Jonah was flapping people who thought that I was a saint and that Jonah was an inconvenience, they had never known that joy. I started feeling sorry for them. I started feeling sorry for the biblical scholars who would write, oh, there's this awful quote in a very old book that people like that God would never use a dumb, and they were meaning someone who cannot speak, messenger, and that everyone knew that God could not use a dumb messenger. That person had never known how Jonah communicates and how someone who doesn't speak communicates. And it transformed my experiences, transformed my anger, my really significant anger at people to this is really sad. You have never known the trials that we've been through and the joy that we have together.
And that gift of insight and that gift of sheer joy that you've gotten working with them is through that personal experience. And perhaps if these people would have done that and given up of themselves, they would have a better understanding of it, right? So it's very wonderful to see how you lead by example. Do you think that religion can be a good vehicle to transmit those experiences or at least demonstrate those experiences? Or is it sometimes, as you mentioned, like sometimes the religion could also be um, a little bit of a hurdle to overcome when trying to get positive messages relayed about people who might need a little extra help or have their unique way of communicating or expressing themselves?
I think it can be both. One of the wonderful things about religious texts, most of my experiences with the Torah and the Bible, like the Christian Bible and the Hebrew Bible, one of the most amazing things about the text is that it can be read in so many different ways. One of the really scary things about a text is that it can be read and used in many different ways. It can be weaponized, but it can also be used to give much peace and joy and hope to people. So, yeah, I think that religious texts and religion more broadly can be really, really helpful in communicating these ideas about like don't use diversity as like a euphemism for disability. I use diversity here as like people are really different and sometimes that freaks you out. Kind of catch-all. Religion teaches so much about what human bodies are and do and think and feel. And yeah, it can be used as a celebration of that, but can also be used as a condemnation of that. One thing that I spoke about with my class yesterday, we were actually reading a text called Leviticus 21. It is in the Hebrew Bible, it's in the Torah and in the Pentateuch, just two different words for the same thing, one in Judaism and one in Christianity. Leviticus 21 details all of these laws of who can and cannot be a high priest. The high priest has to come super, super close to God, and it's a really dangerous job. The text, like I said, details this list of you cannot do this job if you, and there's like blind and mute and uneven legs and crushed testicles, which makes everyone giggle, and hunchback and uneven legs and stuff like that. And students inevitably ask, why are these things in the list? Why can disabled people not be the high priests? And we talked through some of the different interpretations. One interpretation is that the priests represent God and that God is not disabled, so people cannot be disabled. But also God doesn't have legs, so that interpretation doesn't really work super well. The one other interpretation is that people don't like the look of disabled bodies and wrote that into their text. And then the other big interpretation is that God looks at disabled people and doesn't like it. All of those things are really harmful and hurtful to people with disabilities. But there's another interpretation that perhaps these people were prevented from working as high priests because God wanted to protect them from the intense holiness of the sanctuary that they would have to go into. God's holiness in this passage and throughout that context is really, really dangerous. Like if you touch something that you shouldn't touch, you become like infected with this holiness and you will die. perhaps on this reading, which is something that Dr. Miller, a colleague of mine, had kind of developed, on her reading, God does not dislike disabled people. God wants to protect disabled people from inadvertently coming into contact with his intense holiness and dying. So I spoke to my class and I was like, so these are some of the interpretations. When I have to choose which one I'm going to go for, I think about what God is like throughout the Bible and what God is like in my experience. In my experience of God and my experiences of people with disabilities, God does not look at these people and go, oh, I don't like the look of you. I don't want you serving. However, and again, this is my experience. I never tell my students what they should believe. God is protective of people. God is just and caring about people. So to me, the interpretation that God wants to protect folk makes more sense than God wants to not look at people. So I always urge like a contextual look at texts, and also so thinking about the text in its immediate context, but also thinking of is this in line with the God who you know? And the God who the text, so in this instance, the God of the Bible, is this in line with the God of the Bible that you know? Is this God a God who is mean? Or is this God a God who is loving? We have an awful lot more text in the Bible about a God who is loving than a God who is mean. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
It did. It did. Thank you so much. And you really highlighted here the importance, I think, for even someone who would find themselves as an atheist or perhaps agnostic, or someone who has a faith that they're pursuing, the importance of religious studies and just what you could learn from them and use in your life, no matter what kind of faith or relationship or lack of relationship you have with God. So very much appreciate your answers and insights as always. They're brilliant. And with that, I will go ahead and pass the baton off to Zach once again. And just thank you so much.
Yeah, so I just have a couple more questions, kind of on my side of things or the student side of things. Could you share your vision for like student success at Ashland? And then maybe explain a little bit about how the religion department as a whole supports kind of this vision.
Something that I want my students to always know is that their success that success doesn't look the same across even the students in one class. That like Zach's success looks very different from the success of the person sitting next to him, because you are all different people. So my vision for student success is that students recognize that they are individuals as well as part of the broader AU community, and that success is an individual thing, but is also something that they can work towards like as a community. So I would really love us to be thinking like as a university about what success looks like as a family, if it's not like too cliche to call us a family, and as individual people. Then when it comes to the religion department, I think we are really good at recognizing the diversity of our students. And we, as we've kind of already talked about, the religion department offers a lot of core classes that students have to take. And then we have a really thriving major, and we have some amazing upper level classes with students who all they want to talk about all day is religion. I'm really proud of our department that we work with all of these levels of students. And by levels, I don't mean like ability, although it comes into that too, but levels of interest. Like we can teach, and we do teach, so many sections of exploring the Bible, exploring world religions, exploring Christian ethics. And we know that many of our students will go into that class, come out, and we'll never see them again. We also know that these classes are ways that students get really, really excited about religion and then want to carry on in pursuing the study of religion. So I think that we're really good at recognizing the different interests of students, and we really push all of our students, but by giving our majors so many opportunities, like the conference we just talked about, I think we do a pretty great job of encouraging student success across the board.
Yeah, and I definitely agree as someone that has um, kind of learned to enjoy religion a lot more after taking a couple classes. I took both Exploring the Bible and Exploring World Religions. And then my last question would be a little more broad. What advice would you give to students to help make the most of their time at Ashland? So whether that's through the religion department or just the school as a whole.
Look after yourself and ask for help. One of the bravest things that students can do, and I tell them this all the time, one of the bravest things that people can do is ask for help. Whether that is going up to the Writing and Communication Center, I say going up because we live underneath you, going up and saying, I'm really struggling with this essay, or going to your professor and saying, I've had a really bad week, could I hand this in a bit later? Or going to the student health center because you have a really embarrassing medical problem, or going and getting counseling support. All of these things are so important. And I think my biggest advice to people at AU, students you asked, is to know that people care about you on campus and to ask for help, because we will give it. If you're brave enough to ask, or even if you don't feel brave, but you have to act brave, there is support for you here.
Great. Thanks so much. I'm going to hop back in here at the end, but wonderful answers. To revisit something that you were talking about earlier. So now maybe we could put you on the spot, give you the Morris coin. What's a fun fact about yourself that not many people at Ashland University may know?
Oh, I feel like I probably share too much about my interests with my students. I know that in my very first semester, I spoke so much about my animals because I was so nervous that my students learned that to get me off track, they could ask me about chickens. But now I know. Now, if a student asks me about animals, I'm like, nope, back on track. So I guess one thing that I don't talk about too much is that one of my passions outside of school is endurance racing with my horse. So endurance racing is not fast racing, but it is long distance riding where the relationship between the horse and rider and the health of the horse are like of the utmost importance. So our motto as a sport is to finish is to win. And it's all about the relationship with the horse. And that is what I love to be thinking about and love to be doing when I'm not working. I have an amazing horse called Cinderella or Rella, who loves the sport as much as I do. And we have a lot of fun doing it.
It's wonderful. Yeah. That's definitely a unique thing. I don't think there are probably too many other people on campus doing endurance racing with horses. Expect you're the only one.
I think I might be.
Probably. Well, so thank you so much. We need to wrap up, unfortunately, but I'd like to thank Andrew and Zach for co-hosting, and I'd like to thank you, Dr. Jones, for your time today. It's been really, really interesting hearing your perspective on your life and your students and the university moving forward. So I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in to another episode of Wings of Wisdom, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the WoW podcast, where curiosity meets inspiration. Brought to you by the Writing and Communication Center at Ashland University.